Welcome back to the Get Strong podcast. Today we have a special guest, Reagan, who is an international leadership speaker and coach with a proven tactics and insights from over 20 years of experience at Fortune 15 companies, including Amazon and AT&T. She has delivered keynotes, participated in women's leadership panels, produced a TED Talk, and conducted development workshops for thousands of people in more than 20 countries on 6 continents. Her why for everything she does is to use her words in a meaningful way to help change their life. Reagan, I'm so excited that you are here. We actually did a catch-up call about 2 weeks ago, and it was so fun just talking about women growing into the leaders that they are meant to be, and you have been doing amazing work in the world to help women do that. Can you give a quick little insight into who you are? Outside of all of the names.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm a wife. I've been married 21 years. I'm the proud mom of a fur baby, Stanley Pup, named after when the Avalanche won the Stanley Cup. So he was our good luck charm. And I live outside of Denver, Colorado, and of course, love living in Colorado, enjoying all the beauty that's here. And I'm anxious for the snow to stop, but I know at some point it will. I spent over 20 years, as you said, in corporate America. I grew up in Southern California originally and have made my way to several different places, including living in Texas, living in Washington State, and before I landed here in Colorado. And I worked at AT&T for over 17 years. I rotated through leadership development programs, had several careers within that career, moving to different parts of the organization, learning so many incredible skills. And then in 2017, got the opportunity to be an executive at Amazon. And that was a great experience, led a team of 10,000 people around the world, supporting 200 countries and 28 languages. So wonderful, fabulous, enriching experience to be a global leader. And then about 3 years ago, I took the plunge and I stepped out on my own full time. And now I love keynote speaking, leadership development, and executive coaching.
I love that. And we're going to talk, obviously, everyone that's tuning into this podcast is here to get stronger. And when you made that decision to go start your own leadership group and launch your business, you probably had self-doubt and limiting beliefs. How were you feeling? And in that moment when you were starting to think like, can I actually go do this?
Yeah. So when I was 12 years old, I remember thinking I wanted to be a speaker. I felt like that was I remember the exact moment when I was like, I want to be a speaker. And the timing never felt right. I kept thinking, oh, this is the timing. And then something would happen where I would stay in corporate, and this is the time. And then something would happen miraculous. I'd get promoted, or I would get an opportunity, or I got that call from Amazon or whatever. And everything just kept keeping me in. And so I kept waiting and preparing by publishing a book, preparing by getting my coaching certification while I was still leading a large team, starting my LLC, launching my website, just getting little things laid, the groundwork laid. But there is nothing, Jessie, like putting on your left turn signal and cutting across traffic in your life and going, okay, now I'm going to do my own business. And I went from May 2nd, making the most money I'd ever made in my career, to May 3rd, making $0. And I would say a couple of things helped me be strong and make it through that. The first off was the fact that I felt so convicted in my belief in my calling. You shared my why. It's using my words in a meaningful way to help people change their life means you've got to be willing to step out and be bold to live that vision. That's not a small vision. Changing people's lives is an honor, and I get to do it daily, which is incredible. And so it did take some boldness. I think the second thing is I had a community around me that really said, we believe in you. I had women who were my mentors, and they sat down and said, you can do this. Why aren't you doing this? You'll be amazing. I believe in you. And I had a husband who was very honest with me as I was going through my 20-year career, where he was like, I'm not sure you're quite ready yet. And that was hard for him to say, but And it wasn't, he was saying that because he knew I had some maturing. He had some wisdom that said there were some things you needed. He's like, listen, I'll support you if you do it. I just feel like there's some things here or there you can grow in. And then when I actually got ready to make the move, he's like, you're ready. I'm behind you. Go, go, go. And he was so supportive. He is super supportive. I'm on the road almost every week, and he is like, he's so supportive of all the decisions that I make. And then he's also great about being like, okay, we're on vacation. You can't work. You got to time out. Like, now's the time. And he knows how to care for me and regulate me to make sure that he's supporting me truly. And so I think it's you can't make a bold decision like that without a community around you.
How did you make the decision? You went from making the most money you ever had been in your career to not making any the next day. Like, how did you move from, because I think that's where people get stuck, is they're scared of what will happen if they can't build the business, right? Did you just go in and know that, like, this is my chance and I'm going to do the work? Or how do you work through that part of it?
So part of what I encourage people to do is, when you are thinking about making a move like this, if you even have an inkling you want to make a move like this, everybody thinks, what should I do to build the business now? And I'm going to tell you, it's who should you be networking with in order to build your business. And you can be building relationships all the time networking with people, understanding needs, offering what you can. I mean, I coached when I was going through my coaching certification before I left. I gave away hours of coaching at either low or no cost to learn, to build connections, to help other people. And what I'll tell you, Jessie, what I've learned right away, right out of the gate, if you worry about revenue, you will be anxious. If you worry about impact, you'll get revenue. Yes. And that is, I said, how can I use my gifts in service of others? How can I help solve a need? What problem can I obsess over to try and make sure I'm helping people? And the more I obsessed over helping people, the more referrals I got, the more support I got. Companies that I was working with extended me and had me go deeper in their organizations. And so I've learned that it's not about worrying about revenue. You've got to be obsessed over making impact.
Yes. And I think you nailed that. You're going to be either obsessed with the reasons that might not, like, why you shouldn't do it. Like, I don't know if I can. I don't know if anyone's going to want to join me. I don't know if I'm going to be the best leader. Like, I might struggle financially. You'll either become obsessed with the wrong things, or you become obsessed with the impact that you're going to make. And your mind's going to go one way or the other, but you have to be the person that's leading your mind.
Yes, absolutely. You can't, those doubts are going to be there. By the way, one of the things I talk about all the time in my platform, it's even in my TED Talk, is about courage. Courage means you move when you're afraid. You don't wait till you feel confident, because confidence comes after courage. You have to move when you're afraid. So you're never going to feel fully prepared and all ready to go. And I was envisioning, like, Jessie, I could drive down the freeway and then put my turn signal on and elegantly get off the freeway into my new career. I would love to tell you that's how it works, but for very few humans, that's how it works. It's a lot of take the plunge, go do something bold, try something you're afraid of, and then commit to it. And then, and have that investment dollar set aside to invest, have those relationships primed so you can call on them for referrals and for input. But there's never going to be a perfect time.
Yes. And Reagan said, commit to it. That is something you have to remember when launching a business for anybody. If you go in and you are like half-assing, you will not see the success that you deserve. You have to commit, and you have to know that you are doing the work. And that's the same with even your fitness and health journey. That's the same with your marriage. Like, if you want something to work long term, you have to make the commitment that you are showing up every single day. I mean, you have been married 21 years. You know that that's not a perfect marriage every single day, but that when you're committed to your marriage, you're committed to working through the ups and downs. And it's a commitment that you have to make in all areas for to see like the long-term success.
Absolutely. Very well said. I think people think, oh, Reagan, you have your own business. You can kind of work when you want. And I'm working more hours now than I ever did in corporate. I mean, I'm working really long hours because it's my business. And I know it's a joy because I get to do what I want. Now, do I love everything? Like invoicing? Come on now. Who loves invoicing? You know what I mean? Like bookkeeping and invoicing. Luckily, I have an amazing bookkeeper, right? But there is a lot of things you got to hold your nose and do. But generally, I love what I'm doing. I love it. And so I put a lot of work into it. It's definitely something where I love what you said, because I've seen some women go in and either be very tentative or not want to invest because it might fail, or they say, I just want to kind of part-time do whatever. And there's some people who part-time are very successful. Just have your realistic lens. If you want this to be a full-time job, you got to put in a lot of full-time effort to get there.
Yes. And a lot of work behind the scenes. It's not all going to be, I know that you probably feel the same way, but when people post on social media about how I'm just sitting at the beach and money's coming in and like all of those kind of posts, I think also set women up for failure. Because it's like, no, when you are building your own business, you are working more hours. You are staying up late when other people are going to sleep. You are getting up earlier. Like, you are putting the work in to build that business. And I think on social media, sometimes it can look like building a business is so easy. Like growing your email list, just so easy. It just happens overnight, right? Like, how often do you see posts like that? And I'm like, that's not the reality.
Yeah, I'm happy for those humans. That's amazing. Yeah. I just know the majority of us we have to put in the work. And it's not that you can't ask for help. You should ask for help. You should ask for help. We're part of a brand strategy group, right? It's really important that you ask for help. You seek experts, you get advice, you get input, you go to classes, you build your skills, and then you got to put them to work. Yes. And that's where the rubber hits the road.
Yeah. And both of us we should have mentioned it. We both work with a company called Brand Builders. And if you are someone that wants to launch a book, you want to launch your speaking career, you want help in growing a business, there's different routes you can take. But I've been working with them. This is my second year. How long have you been working with them?
Since the beginning. So about 2.5 years, almost 3.
Yeah. And again, you won't know all the answers. So when you are ready to invest in something, make sure you invest in some sort of coach or mentor or someone who can guide you, because you won't know how to do everything yourself, and you don't have to. And then find something that's at your level. Obviously, if you're launching a business, you're probably nervous about money. So no, don't go spend thousands of dollars in a mentor, but find a mentor that fits, or the training videos that fit in your budget for where you're at.
Agreed.
I would say mentorship is the thing that pulls everyone through. And it's funny, I was thinking about it this morning, just how I think every person in the world would stick to a fitness and health journey if they had a coach checking in on them every single day. But when we don't, you fail and you give up on yourself. And it's like, if you had someone checking in on you, whether it's in your business or whatever, and every day was like, how was it? It's like we would all succeed so much better. And that's why I think it's so important to have mentors and people that are guiding you that know more than you too.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no way you're going to know it all. And I think, Jessie, that's one of the beliefs that holds women back, is we have what I call the competence complex, which is this belief we have to know everything about everything or we can't be confident about anything. And we worry, well, if I'm not the expert, then I can't go start a business. Or if I'm not the person who knows everything, I can't go be a leader here, or I can't volunteer for this event, or I can't possibly lead this thing because I'm not the expert. And that is a lie that we fall into as women. It's one of the societally driven beliefs that tells us we have to know everything. And so it's interesting because when I ask people, do you mind if someone asks you for help? They're like, oh no, I love helping people. I would be happy to help. And then I say, do you think less of that person? No, not at all. I would love to help them. Everybody needs help. And then I ask them, how do you feel asking for help? Well, I just don't want to bother people. I don't want to bother them. So I'm like, wait a minute. When someone asks you for help, you feel honored to help and don't judge them. And you feel like, yes, I'd be happy to. But when you ask for help, you're a bother. And so the competence complex is whispering in your ear, well, that's because you should. It's shoulding on you. You should know that. You should be more of an expert. You shouldn't speak up if you don't know everything. And I'll tell you, overcoming that voice was so critical in my career to say, I don't know everything. But instead of viewing me asking a question, for example, as me looking stupid, it actually makes you look smart.
Yeah.
Because I'm giving you that honor and that status by asking you a question and involving you in what I'm doing.
Yes. And how would you, for someone that's listening right now and knows that they need to ask for help, how would you recommend them asking for help if they're nervous about it? They don't want to look dumb. They're just uncomfortable putting themselves out there in that way. How would you approach that?
So I've got a couple of thoughts on that. One of them is do not apologize. Do not apologize. I'm so sorry. This might be stupid. I know you all might know the answer. I'm probably the only one who doesn't know. I think that this is probably silly. Cut the apologies. Instead, I like to put people through ART, which is apology replacement treatment. Don't apologize, but ask your curious question confidently. Jessie, as an expert, I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Jessie, is the one who's already been working on this for several years, I'm very curious about XYZ. That's still raising Jessie as an expert, but it's not putting me down in the process.
Yes.
So you do not have to put yourself down in the process. You can ask questions confidently. I'm very curious about this. Can I learn more about that? I'd love for you to explain this more. You're obviously an expert or you're passionate about this area, obviously. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. And that's what I call apology replacement treatment. Instead of apologizing, you replace it with elevating the other person's status and inquiring about their knowledge. So I think that's one really critical piece. I think the other piece is what I call the puzzle methodology. As women, we tend to focus on what we don't know instead of feeling confident about what we do know. And so when you're building a puzzle, the first thing you do is look for the corner pieces, right? The edge pieces, because it's obvious. These are the edge pieces. And I say those are obvious. Those are the obvious things you know. Like if you want to ask a question or if you feel like you don't know what you're doing on something, think about what you do know and establish in your mind, okay, at least I've got these edge pieces. These are the things I for sure know. And then fill in some of the things that are more nuanced, like maybe you understand the politics, or maybe you've worked with this organization before, or maybe you know this boss really well. Like these are some of the unspoken, nuanced things you know. Fill that part of the puzzle in. And then what you'll find is a lot of times you're just missing a few pieces of the puzzle. Then develop strategic consultation questions around just those missing pieces. And that makes you feel a lot more confident. I had a mentee who worked at a big tech company, and she was an amazing project manager. Amazing. And she was moved from one part of the organization where she was doing sort of the e-commerce side over to the cybersecurity side. Now, she knew nothing about cybersecurity. And that wasn't even her job. But I remember telling her, hey, how's your new job going? You got this big role. They handpicked you. They obviously think you're amazing. And she was like, it's miserable. Reagan, every single day I come in and I just don't know what I'm doing. And I feel so stupid asking the cybersecurity experts about cybersecurity. I said, do you really think the cybersecurity experts mind talking about cybersecurity? She goes, yeah, that's true. They have like PhDs in it. I said, they probably don't mind. In fact, they probably appreciate that as the project manager, you're trying to educate yourself on an area. I said, do you know how to lead project management? Yes. That's the framework. Those puzzle pieces. I said, okay, what else do you know? You've worked at this company 10 years. Do you know the nuance, the politics, how to get things done, ways to get things done, the backward way to get things done, how to get approvals, how to work with finance? I said, you know all these other things. She goes, Dad, that's true. I said, what do you not know? She goes, I guess I just don't know the specifics of cybersecurity. And I said, do you think maybe you could partner with someone to cover up that knowledge versus you feeling like you have to know it all yourself? That's the competence complex. And that's exactly what she did, and felt a lot more confident leaving the conversation that she was bringing something to the table. So I'd say those are two tactics, Jessie, I like to share with people to fight this competence complex telling you, oh my gosh, you shouldn't have confidence because you don't know these things.
Yeah. And remembering, like she's saying, if you figure out what you do know, it also makes you feel like, okay, I'm not completely dumb. Like I know these things. I just need help in these certain areas instead of feeling like, because it's so easy to say like, I know nothing. Like she was saying, it's like, I just don't know anything. And it's like, you do know things. There's just certain parts that you do. There's some book that I read, and I forget what book it is, but they said anytime you say, like, use the words, I have never done this, or you always do this, you should never use those words because it's probably not true. Like, you're not always saying something that way, or you've never done whatever. And it's just switching that wording so that you realize, like, no, you're just in something that you don't know right now, but it doesn't mean you never did that, you know?
Exactly. Exactly.
And just so you guys know, today we really just wanted to talk about debunking some of the messages that women think and the way that we feel about ourselves and the standards that we set ourselves, because Reagan is a perfect example of someone who was not only in the field for 20 years in corporate, but she stepped out and did something that was scary and has built something amazing. And she had all the fears and self-doubts and the limiting beliefs and everything that we struggle with. You think 6,000 to 8,000 thoughts per day, and 80% of our thoughts are negative. So as women, like, you are training, your brain is telling you negative thoughts all day long. And if you're not careful, you will believe those, and you will not go out and do anything that's scary or uncomfortable because you're living in a spot of comfort and you're scared to put yourself out there. Going back to what you were saying, even when you're asking for questions, I know I was thinking back to like when I was in high school, and I was always a person that like, there was a stage where I would raise my hand, and whether I knew the answer or not, I would take a guess. But then there was also the stage where I started getting more uncomfortable to raise my hand because I was like, what if I get it wrong and then I'm on the spot? Or like when a teacher would call on you and you had to read out loud when you were in elementary school. Those nervousness feelings that you get as an adult too.
Absolutely. They're really stemmed neurologically. Our limbic system, like you said, is always looking for threats. And that's a good thing. It keeps us alive. It makes sure that, our adrenaline kicks in or whenever we need. It also is, if something is unknown, it automatically goes negative. So it's like, well, if I don't know how I'm going to lead my business, or I don't know if I should speak up, or I'm not sure I know all the answer, I'm not sure what people are going to think of me, I don't know. If there's uncertainty, our brain jumps to negativity. And so we have to just know that about ourselves. Okay, thank you, brain. I appreciate you weighing in. There actually is not a threat here. And I'm going to move forward with the thought of what I can move forward, what I do know. And just that unconscious brain is going to take over, and we just have to be consciously moving forward with courage.
Yes. All right. So what are some of the major messages that women are telling themselves that are holding them back that you have seen in corporate and just in life in your leadership journey?
Well, we've already talked about the competence complex. So another one I'd like to bring up is what I call the boss friend belief. And this is when I see a lot of women in leadership, and this could be leadership in your community, in your church, in an organization. It could be, anywhere you're a leader. We have this feeling like, I want to be everyone's friend. You know what I mean? Jessie, I don't want to be that boss. I don't want to be that boss. I don't want to be the one that's cold and callous and mean and rude. So I want to make everybody happy. I want to be liked. And we want to be liked. And that is something that women fall into. We want to be liked. And we start telling ourselves like, well, I don't want to come across too heavy-handed, so I'm not going to give any feedback. Or I don't want people to dislike what I have to say, so I'm just going to avoid situations because that's better, because then if I avoid the situation, maybe it'll go away or maybe it won't happen. And I will tell you, that is a recipe for a toxic environment. It's a recipe for a toxic environment because I think about it this way, with this boss friend belief, for example, people have a lot of friends. They only have one boss, and they need them to be a good one. They need a good boss. They deserve that. They deserve someone who is going to give them feedback. And here's the lie, the misnomer that falls into is you eventually, maybe at first you're liked because you're so friendly and supportive and upbeat and everything's great and you're awesome and you're wonderful and everything is great and you feel really good. People feel really good about that. But when they start to sense you're dissatisfied with something, or you're passively aggressively hinting at something, or you won't give one-on-one feedback, you'll just kind of give a group weird announcement like, hey guys, I need everybody to kind of keep an eye on it. I've kind of heard that there's been some little challenges here and we really got to watch it and whatever. When they know, that's a signal you're unhappy, but you're not willing to say anything about it. They stop respecting you and they stop trusting you. And I had to learn this the very hard way, because I will tell you, when I first started learning how to give direct feedback, I was horrible. I tried to mimic other people, and I came in and there was a situation with an employee who had gone around my back to my boss, and it had been and I was furious, and I just was super emotional and was like, how dare you, blah, blah, blah. She started bawling. It was a meltdown, no trust. And I was like, okay, that was definitely wrong, And then there were other times I was like, hey girl, you could just, think about coming to work. That'd be super awesome, which was way too soft. And so it is this Goldilocks thing. You've got to find the right middle ground where you really do give both positive, constructive feedback. Accountability really is positive feedback and redirecting feedback. It's not all negative. You've got to give 6-to-1. Harvard Business Review says you should be giving positive feedback on a 6-to-1 ratio. So that's not just praise, but acknowledgement, like, wow, I really liked the way you did that, or I'm very proud of our team and that we accomplished this, or Jessie, I saw something in you and you did a wonderful job delivering on that. Really, it's not just good job, good job, good job, good job. It's really that specific positive reinforcement as well as specific negative reinforcement. And I'll tell you, the more direct feedback I gave combined with specific positive reinforcement, the better leader I became. The better leader I became, because people really respected that I was willing to be honest and I was willing to be direct, and they believed me when I gave them all these positive reinforcements. They believed me. And then when I actually gave them that one negative, when I actually gave them the constructive feedback and I was specific and honest, and it came from a place of love and care for their growth, they say feedback is expensive because it's costly to the person giving it.
Yes.
And we can't be cheapskates. We've got to be willing to pay the price of giving constructive feedback, whether it's to our family, whether it's to our friends, whether it's to the volunteer organizations, or whether it's in the workplaces. We've got to be willing to give the positive and the constructive.
Yeah, because that's how people grow. And if you're not willing to do that, people aren't going to take you serious. And you're also holding them back from if you're telling people every single time, like, oh, that was good. Even, in parenting, if you tell your kids everything's good when their behavior is not, you're training them to think that what they're doing is the best that they can do, instead of them realizing that hey, you did this really well, but here's where you can improve so you can become a better leader in whatever you're in.
Yeah. And if you try to give people 6 compliments at one sitting, it's really awkward. I'll just save you you've got to be on the spot. And one of the most powerful stories I heard when I shared this 6-to-1 ratio was someone came up to me after a training class and said, I think the place I'm the most guilty is with my daughter. She said, my daughter came to me the other day and she said, Mom, I'm getting 5 A's in all my classes. And the only one you ever talk to me about is the one where I'm getting a B. And so we do have to be a drumbeat of specific, positive reinforcement, building them up. There's a myth that if you give people praise, it'll make them complacent. There's zero research that I have found that reinforces that. I would say you do, find the positive, real things you can really reinforce. And then, to your point, help people grow by giving them that specific, honest feedback, and fight that boss friend belief that it'll make you liked if you just tell everyone what they want to hear.
Yes. And I can second that if you don't give the positives first, as I have a high schooler and I have made that mistake of I say something about like, okay, she gets really good grades. And so it's like, oh, but you have this B. And she's like, I have all A's. And why does this one B the only thing you acknowledge? Like, I'm doing really well. And so making sure that when you are giving those positive things, you're building them up so that they trust you and they see you. And then when you give a critique, it doesn't feel like you're focusing on just the negatives about them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so 75% of women feel that are in executive positions feel imposter syndrome. How would you walk through that for people? Like, how do they overcome that feeling like I'm not qualified to do this and comparing themselves to everyone else?
Yeah, I think that imposter syndrome is real for women. It's real for men too, by the way. I have a lot of men even whisper in my ear, like, they put me in charge of this whole area and I don't know what I'm doing, you know? But for women, it's particularly acute because of some of the messages we're getting. I mean, even Yale studied that even as young as sixth grade, little girls start describing their performance as lower than men. And so it's ingrained this, belief that we should feel embarrassed or apologize for our performance. And we feel like, I don't know if I belong here. And so the first thing I want you to do is recognize there are other people in the room who feel the same way. You're not alone. Chances are in a group of 10 or 12 people or 14 people, there are other people in the room who feel the same way as you. Like, I don't belong here, or I don't know what I'm saying, or should I even be here? You're probably not alone. And so recognize that this is not sometimes one of the things we do is isolate ourselves. Like, I'm the only one who feels this way. And I want to just give you this big hug and encouragement. You are not the only one who feels this way. So that should help you recognize that. And then what I will tell you is going back to courage, practicing courage. A lot of people say like, fake it till you make it. And I'm like, kinda. What I prefer to say is move when you're afraid. You know, continue to ask the question or suggest the idea or bring it up, because practice at courage will give you confidence. Because here's what's going to happen. You're going to say something stupid. You're going to say something silly. You're going to ask a question that doesn't make sense. And you're going to come in the next day. And you're going to keep moving. And I mean, there's fatal mistakes you make in your career. You got to be thoughtful about those. There are what I call CLMs, career limiting moves, that you do make that are not good. You know, throwing water in the CEO's face and walking out, probably not the best move right there, you know? But part of what I try to tell people is some people tell me, well, women can't speak up. Women can't push back. Women can't share their true opinions. And I will tell you, let's not kid ourselves. There are double binds where women are expected to be warm and friendly and nice, and they're also expected to be strategic and smart and insightful. And that's difficult. It's a difficult balance. It still exists. All the research shows that it's still there. But what I tried to aim for when I tried to say, okay, I'm at this table, I'm going to use courage, even though I've got this talk track of imposter syndrome in my head, is I tried over years of trial and error to land with passionate, data-driven insights. Sometimes women lean too far into passion. I really feel, and it's not fair, and this is not going to work, and we've got to be more mindful. And we come from a place of emotion and passion. And then other women come across too data-driven. They're very much like, well, the data and research shows that we should do this, and the research shows, and the data shows, and this is, and my team, and the insights. And when we try to hide behind a veil of research, this is why when women go into a meeting and they're the presenters, sometimes they feel better because they're in control of the conversation, and so they feel okay. Where they start to get nervous is when we start opening it up for questions. No one can ask me anything, and I feel super insecure, and that, you know, that imposter syndrome is just in my head. And so what I would tell you is passionate, data driven. That's really important because we want to combine those two things. The other thing I would say is don't feel like you have to contribute with an answer. You can contribute with a question. And before I go into some meetings, I don't prepare answers, I prepare questions. I write down a list of questions I know that I can ask in a meeting, and I can contribute. Sometimes I had a boss named Tom Weiland. He was fairly introverted, one of the most thoughtful leaders I've ever worked for. And he would sit in the back of the room and let all of us scream and yell and blah, 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 and tire ourselves out like toddlers, and finally we'd wait. And he would just ask a single question, the mic drop question that blew everybody's mind. He communicated more with a question than he did with a statement. And so I would tell you, if you want to feel more comfortable networking, where we have this imposter syndrome, or in meetings, or in organizations, or wherever we are out with other friends, or we're feeling this imposter syndrome, you can contribute with a question. It doesn't have to be a statement. And that's actually a very good way to overcome that imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I love that. I never actually have really thought about that. And sometimes you don't have to you don't have to be like the center of attention in every meeting either. In order to be seen is go into the meeting, and you don't have to be, like you said, he would sit there and allow all this stuff, but then he would say his question, and it was like, dang.
Exactly.
What would be, I have 3 questions that I always ask at the end of every episode. What is one bold move you made that changed everything?
When I was at AT&T, I had been there for 17 years, and it would have been very safe for me to stay there. It's a great company. It has a lot of, obviously in a 100-year-old history. I knew everybody. I was very well networked. I was very well respected. And I will tell you, the bold move of moving to Amazon was life-changing for me. It allowed me to learn things that I would have never learned just staying in the telecommunications industry, just switching over to e-commerce and tech and innovation. And while I was at Amazon, I raised my hand to lead a 10,000 person organization. And that was a very technical organization. It had 175 product, software developers, data scientists. I don't have a computer science degree. So it was already a stretch for me to move, companies after all those years. Then to raise my hand and lead a big technical organization was a big, bold move. And I will tell you, I remember sitting there thinking, I don't know if I can do it. I'm not sure. And my husband looked at me and he said, you say you want to be a role model for women. Here's your chance. Yes. No woman had ever led that organization before. And it was very big, very influential job, very technical. And he's like, this is your chance. And I appreciated the nudge to take that bold move.
I love that. And just that really is, when you step in, you are showing other women what they can do. And every time you stay quiet and you stay small, people aren't seeing that they can go do more and they can be more. So remember that no matter where you're at in life, that when you step into something scary, you are showing other women. You might not even be aware, but there's people sitting in that meeting, or there's people watching you on social media, whether it's in fitness or business or health, wherever, but they are seeing you take that step, and they may never tell you, but you will put a little inspiration inside of them that, hey, she did this, I can go do this too, or I can go do whatever their dream is. But there's people that are watching that you weren't even aware of that are getting inspired. I love that. Number 2, where did you have to build your strength from, mentally, emotionally, or physically, to become who you are today?
So I would say, when I was in first grade, my first grade teacher was a brand new teacher. And so she had just come straight out of schooling. And she looked at this kid who was under the desk and wandering the halls and couldn't pay attention and was super smart when I could concentrate, but most of the time had a hard time concentrating. And she raised the issue of getting me tested for attention deficit disorder. And I was tested and diagnosed, and I went into special education very young as part of my learning plan. And I will tell you that I had to learn how to do things intentionally that a lot of people could do naturally. And it was a really big push for me for me to just sit down and study was so excruciatingly difficult, or for me to be able to focus through an entire math problem. Can you imagine when you have attention deficit disorder and you're trying to do long division, you get lost halfway through the problem, or algebra, getting lost halfway through the problem? It was so difficult. And I think that the kind of schooling and support and tough love my special education teacher gave me, Mrs. Kovach, I will tell you, taught me to be very intentional. And intentionality is one of my monikers. It's one of the things I do well as a friend, I do as a wife, I do as a business leader, I do as a coach. I'm very intentional about what I do. And I know that a lot of that came from when I had to learn from what was natural to others, I had to make intentional for me.
Nice. That's good. And that's crazy that it stemmed from first grade. Like,
yeah,
such a cool moment. If you could go back and tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
I think it was just what a lot of people probably want to tell themselves, which is do not be so concerned with fitting in. I was so disappointed that I was so non-compliant. First of all, my name's Reagan. I wanted a cool name like Christine or Sarah or Jennifer that was on all the names and the placards and the stickers and the puffy paint shirts and everything else. Mine had this weird name, you know. I didn't like that. I didn't like that my brain worked differently. I was I loved to perform, and I was always very, I was smart, but I had a hard time sort of owning that. And I wanted to fit in, and I was a cheerleader. So of course I wanted to look like all the cheerleaders, and I wanted, I drove this weird old beat up car, and they all had brand new, beautiful cars. And I just all the time was in a different beat. Do you know that originality is why I am so successful today? And I just want to tell that little girl, it's okay. It's okay that you don't fit in and look like others. Try to be who God intended you to be, who you were specifically and uniquely designed to be. And it's okay. I know you're upset that you've got stringy hair and, you don't look like everyone else and you don't have the coolest clothes. And there's a part of me that, there's a part of that just is natural with how you're growing up. But man, I wish I could just tell that girl, when you hit your stride, you will be unstoppable. And that was so true. Once I hit college and I was a business major, I loved it. When I got out in the workplace, I was very successful. And out being on my own, my originality, this weird name I have is how people remember me.
Yes.
And it really is all the things that I was ashamed of or afraid of or didn't or wanted to hide are now the things that make me who I am.
Yes. And we're all so different for a reason. And we all grow up wanting to be like somebody that we're not, instead of leaning into the things that we are. And no matter who you are, we all have, when you were saying, if there's 14 people in the room, there's people that felt that way. And even if there's people that are in that room that aren't feeling that way, they probably did at one point, because we all want to fit in and be accepted. And we forget that the reason you're different is going to be your superpower. That is like your biggest strength, that no one else gets to be exactly like you and do things exactly the way that you do them. And the more you lean into that, the more success you will have in life, the more growth that you will have, the more belief and confidence you will have, because you're not trying to be someone that you're not. You're trying to be who God intended you to be, which is literally your superpower. And we take that away from kids as they grow up. And it's like everybody, you just want to fit in. And I think that everyone feels that way in high school and as you go into college, and then you start to find yourself later in life and you're like, oh, okay. But you have to be careful not to get stuck in the comparison trap of what other people are doing. Anytime you see someone that is successful, ask yourself, like, what are they doing to be successful, instead of saying that you can't do that. Because any woman you see on social media or see out in life, she has worked hard to get to where she is. Most people do not just get success. And if you learn from them, like I have found even on social media, you can reach out to people and ask them questions. And people who are successful want to help other people be successful. Like if someone's not helping, that's probably because they have their own limiting beliefs and self-doubts. But for the most part, it's like people want to cheer you on, and you have to know that. And the more you put yourself out there and ask the questions, the more you can grow and grow in community too.
Absolutely. Very, very well said, Jessie.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on today. How can people connect with you?
If you want to go to my website, reagancannon.com, I've got a lot of places for you to engage there. I've got a blog you can subscribe to where I'm constantly putting out information. My TED Talk is there, The Real Reason Women Aren't Promoted. You can check out my TED Talk and lots of other ways to get connected with me there.
Love that. And I will put her stuff in the show notes as well, because I know most of you are probably listening from your cars or getting ready. So everything will be connected when you guys listen to the episode. Just scroll to the bottom and you will be able to connect with her. Thank you so much for coming in and debunking messages today and helping women become their strongest self. All right.